There's 3 pillars that an applicant must satisfy to be able to serve in the United States Army. Number 1, intellect, which is your ASVAB. Number 2, moral, which is your background checks can be done with the fingerprints. And number 3, your medical. Joining the Army in 2023 already have changed the process. Or did it? Welcome to the channel. My name is Bombo and this is FNG. I've been in the Army for over 16 years and I tell you, at some point we rotate and we're always gonna be the new guy. This is my first video on this channel, so this is everything about the Army, career progression, how to join, all that stuff. So let's get to the video. Let's start this channel by talking about joining the military. What really has changed? I've been in recruiting for over a decade and I tell you, there's a lot of things that's changed, but a lot of things stayed the same. So let's start about talking to a recruiter. Before you talk to a recruiter, do your research. It's 2023. Everything is available to you. There are only 2 regulations that covers, for the most part, you enlisting in the United States Army. And I'll put that in the link in the description. Don't worry, you don't need to be in the Army to access this regulation. It's available to anybody. First is the AR 61210 that basically tells you how to join the Army or what are the qualifications to join the Army. And the other one is AR 40-501. Basically, it's medical standards to join the Army. That hasn't changed. All right, before you click off this video, I know those regulations are long and it can be very, very confusing. Watch the video till the end. I'll tell you which chapters for you to look at. So it's kind of consolidated because a lot of them don't even apply to you. First things first, you go talk to the recruiter. You may not want to join the Army yet. You're just getting some information. That's cool, man. You're not enlisting when you go to the office. That's fine. And I know there's bonuses, all that stuff, benefits, education. A lot of it is available on Google, dude. Just look it up. The main thing you're really watching this video for is the process. I don't really know a lot of people talk about the process. So you go to the Army recruiter, you talked about everything, all the benefits, and be nice to your recruiters. They don't know everything all the time because the Army's regulations and the Army's benefit changes. So it's on you to look it up. But even if your recruiter missed something, there's a lot of different layers and everything is gonna be in your contract anyway. You just gotta review them. We call it RIF. Reading is fundamental, or RIFF, reading is freaking fundamental. After all the benefits have been talked about, you ask your questions, all that stuff. The next thing is the job, right? You always ask about the job. The Army is one of the branches, I think the only branch that you literally have to pick a job before you swear in and join. It's gonna be in your contract. Now, what is it about the open contract? No, you can't do that. There's no such thing in the Army. We literally can't put you in the Army without a job. So you gotta get a job first. So don't worry about the job for now. It will come up later on in the video. So let's move on to the next step, which is the process. You're gonna need some documentation. If you bring this with you, it would be faster. If not, you go grab it because you're gonna need it. Your recruiter will need it. And no, you can't skip a recruiter. Yeah. You need them. Very important. Nothing happens without them. There are 4 documents at a minimum you're gonna need to be able to enlist in the Army depending on your situation. Number 1 is your ID, state ID. Number 2 is your birth certificate. Number 3, social security card. And number 4 is your high school diploma at a minimum, or GED. Something that tells you you graduated high school at least, or any equivalent of that. Next thing is you're gonna have to do a practice ASVAB test. And it's about 20 to 30 minutes. And don't brush it off because your recruiter can actually look at jobs that are available just with that test. And obviously if you cheat, not gonna help you either. That gives you an idea how you're gonna score with the ASVAB. And don't worry about the ASVAB very much. There's a lot of study guides out there and the ASVAB is really math, English, kind of like your SAT. Once you score good in the practice test, then you're ready to move on to the next step, which is your fingerprints. In the recruiting office, you're gonna get your fingerprints done to see if there's any records of you out there, criminal records. Now, before a recruiter can run your fingerprints, you'll have to sign a documentation allowing the United States Army to run your background check. Now, if you have some law violations, that's fine. There are some waivers for that. For you to know what are waiverable law violations and how many you're allowed to have law violations, this is where the regulation comes into play, which is the AR 601210 Chapter 4. Remember that, Chapter 4, which covers all the waivers, everything. The next thing is you're gonna take the ASVAB. Your recruiter can set it up. And the crazy thing is 2023, you can actually take a PICAT. It's equivalent to the ASVAB. The PICAT, you can take it in the office or at your home, but you know, if you cheat, we'll know. Because after you take the PICAT, you're gonna have to take a verification test to prove that you didn't cheat. That verification test can only be done at MEPS. That verification test verifies your score, whether you keep the score you got in the PICAT or it rolls into an actual ASVAB if your score does not match from your PICAT. So just be prepared. At this point, you got your background check, you took the ASVAB, you passed the ASVAB. Now let's talk more about the ASVAB or the PICAT. They're all one and the same anyway, because that test serves as two things. One, to qualify for military service. Number two, job placement. The jobs, the bonuses, all that stuff, it's all determined by your ASVAB score. So you need to do well. Now comes Genesis. What is Genesis? It's part of the medical process. Genesis is basically a database that captures and records every single time you've been to a doctor. Yeah, they know, Uncle Sam. They watching you. They are. But don't worry about it, I got you covered. And don't even think about not being truthful about your medical history, because trust me, Uncle Sam knows. What the Genesis is really is that you're gonna sign a paperwork releasing your medical information. That gets put on the system, and everything you've ever been seen for in a doctor will show up. So just be truthful to the best of your knowledge so we can annotate all that stuff. All there is to it is that what you say and what the recruiter puts on the paperwork matches what's on the Genesis. That's all. It's not a showstopper. Now, if you're worried about your medical condition, whether it's disqualifying or not, that's where the regulation is handy again. That's the AR 40-501. It's medical standards. That's what it is. My suggestion to you, leave that to the professionals. Leave that to the recruiter. Even the recruiter don't even know, because even some medical conditions can be waived, but it requires a doctor to waive that for military service. So just fill it out. After all that's been submitted, in a perfect world scenario, MEPS will notify the recruiting station that you are processing authorized. Once you're processing authorized, now you're ready to move on to the next step, which is the medical examination. That's easy. Recruiter will reserve you a hotel room free of charge. You get dinner for free at the hotel, and then the next day you go to the medical process. In a medical process, basically they just screen you. There's different phases, different stages, whatever you want to call it, but each stage you're going to get a score. You get a score whether it's 0, 1, 2, or 3. 0 means the medical doctor at MEPS can make a decision whether you qualified or not. So 0 means they don't know. What happens if you get a 0? It's either you have to provide additional medical documentation, or you have to come back from MEPS in a later date to make sure that you qualify. This normally happens if your blood pressure is high or you're underweight, overweight, all that stuff. You're not disqualified. They just can't decide. Next is 1. Number 1, that's really what you want. 1 means you're good to go. So that's the score you're aiming for, 1. Next is a 2. 2, you're not going to get a 2 at MEPS because 2 is basically an approved waiver or something like that. You're not going to get a 2, but just so you know, 2 exists, but you're aiming for 1. The last one is 3, and you don't want a 3. However, we can't avoid getting a 3. 3 means you're disqualified, whether it's temporary or permanently. At which point, if it's temporary, you just have to come back on a later date at MEPS to make sure and they launch the medical waiver, or you have to provide additional documentation. The difference between a 0 and a 3, because it seems the same, because 0 and 3 you have to provide additional documentation or wait a certain time to go back to MEPS to get seen again. The biggest difference is if you're a 0 and they determined after you submitted medical documentation or you've been seen again that you're fully qualified, that 0 will turn into 1. A 3 will always be a 3. After you submit medical documentation or seen a specialist to determine your qualification medically, that 3 will not change. What MEPS will do is just initiate a medical waiver and wait for it to come back to get approved or disapproved. So remember I said there were stages? So over there, it's really what we call the PUHLES. P-U-H-L-E-S. P means physical, overall. H means hearing. E means, I skipped a step. P means physical, anything pulmonary, anything and everything. Next is H. H means hearing. They're going to check your ears. U means upper extremities, so torso all the way up. L is lower extremities, from the waist down. E means eyes. S means psych. Yeah, psych, S. I know it's P, but S means psych. So psych means, I don't know, behavioral health, ADD, ADHD, all that stuff. They're going to look into that stuff. Then you get a score based on those. So at this point, you are now a fully qualified applicant for the United States Army. If you have a job set up already, then you're good. If not, go talk to the recruiter. Oh, I forgot to tell you, you have to pass the drug test. Yes, there's a drug test. I know it's legal in most states, but the Army, it's federal. You still gotta pass it. But if you just smoked a few days ago, fine. You ain't breaking the rules. You can still talk to the recruiter, but you can't go to MEPS. The moment you pissed hot at MEPS, you're disqualified. Now you gotta wait 90 days. And that's the current regulation. It might change. Back in the day, they won't even waive that. So don't risk it. If you smoke weed, just be honest with the recruiter. There's nothing to gain for you taking the medical exam at MEPS because you will take a drug test there. Just tell them. Once you're clear and you made a decision to change your life, then you are good to go. Whew, that's a lot of process. So now you're fully qualified. Most exciting part is picking the job. We call it MOS, but it's a job. The recruiter will go on his laptop and we'll look at the jobs that are available for you. And you'll be able to have a discussion with them what you want to do. Now, when you look at these jobs, it will tell you the job itself. Then the recruiter will explain every single one of them. Sometimes there's a lot, sometimes there's not a whole lot. That's fine. It will tell you the name of the job description, when you're shipping to basic combat training. If there's money involved, that job may have 0 bonus or may have $10,000 bonus, $20,000 bonus. It depends. And also it gives you the term of service. That term of service, it could be 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. No, you can't sign up for 7 or 6. I think it's 5 years for active duty. It is important to know these years of service though, because there are different bonuses for each year you serve. So some of them will offer a certain amount of bonus for 3-year enlistment or 4-year or 5-year or whatsoever. So that's important to know. We're almost at the end of this video. You get the job, you're medical qualified, you're ASVAB qualified, you get the bonus. Last thing you need to do is swear in. I just want to make sure you understand, swearing in the Army, active duty, doesn't mean you're shipping that day. I'm still amazed sometimes when a lot of people think that the soonest they enlist, they ship. No, when you pick a job before you swear in, because we can't swear you in or enlist you in the Army without a job, and that job tells you what? Your date of training. Typically, the soonest I've seen was 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Some of them are a few months. Now, if you don't want to leave right away for prior engagement, that's fine. You can tell your recruiter that and they can move that ship date around. That's okay. We'll accommodate. Well, at least we'll try to. After that, you enlist at MEPS. You swear right hand, and then you're part of the future soldier. If you swear in active duty, after all that stuff we talked about, you swear in, at that point you become a future soldier. Your recruiter will take care of you, will make sure everything is prepped for you to go to ship out for basic training based on your contract. Now for active duty, you're gonna have to go back to MEPS the day before you ship out for training. You ship out for training normally on a Monday or Tuesday, occasionally on a Wednesday. So plan the day before that, you're gonna go back to the hotel. The next day you go to MEPS. You swear in for the second time. That puts you on active duty. For the reserve is a little different because the reserve, once you swear in, you're already in the reserve. That's it. There's no going back to MEPS. The next step is just the recruiter taking you to your reserve units, introducing you to the place you're gonna be working with, the people. They're gonna tell you a lot of different information like when are the drill days, when are you supposed to show up. They're gonna give you What else they give you? Oh, they're gonna ask for your uniform sizes because they're gonna order your uniform. You're gonna get some uniform too in basic training. You're gonna get an ID card, dog tags, all that stuff. Immediately after you swear in, you just gotta schedule it. Now for the reserve, when it comes to shipping, you don't go back to MEPS. Your recruiter will just grab all your packet at MEPS. That packet will have all your information, your medical profile, all that stuff, and your flight itinerary. So the recruiter, all he needs to do is take you to the airport. Make sure you show up and you're good to go. That's it. You go to training still, basic training in AIT. After you're done with those two, you just come back and report to your reserve unit. And I know there's so much stuff to cover, but I try to shorten this as short as possible so you can understand. Before you talk to your recruiter, you have all the information. Now, if you got any more questions, just put in the comments below. If you learned something in this video, hit the like, subscribe. And remember, if you have that mentality of a new guy, you'll always learn something new. I'll catch you later.